Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy, and we are specifically going to talk about Vivek and Joe Rogan, and what Vivek Ramaswamy should do about Joe Rogan. So, Joe Rogan is really fascinating. He is a kingmaker, but he doesn't want to be a kingmaker. So Joe Rogan absolutely catapulted Andrew Yang into prominence in the Democrat 2020 election. Andrew Yang was able to get some fantastic representation for intelligent minority 2020 U.S. presidential Democrat candidates, and specifically he was able to show himself to be extremely intelligent, extremely effective, and he was a phenomenal candidate. I actually don't think Andrew Yang, you could count Andrew Yang's mistakes on one hand. I think the only real, I think the only real mistake Andrew Yang made in running was quitting after he did poorly in Super Tuesday. He absolutely should have lost in the primary. He should not have surrendered. That was his only real mistake, right? And so Vivek Ramaswamy absolutely has to learn that lesson from Andrew Yang and make sure that he does not make that mistake. But the reality is Vivek Ramaswamy is running against, make no mistake, Vivek is running against President Donald Trump and no one else. That, you know, as long as President Donald Trump is running, no other candidate exists. He's just a different level of candidate. And as long as he is in the election, as long as he is in the 2024 U.S. presidential race, that's it. You can't run against anybody but him, right? And the reality is you can't even really run against Trump, right? What you have to do is you have to show people that you are a viable candidate and not quit. That's it. That's all you can do. Is every day show that you are exciting, you're a viable candidate, you're a great option for U.S. president, and not quit, because it is going to be a grind. It is absolutely going to be brutal. The mainstream media, not even the mainstream media, just the media in general, right? Like, because I think mainstream media that's kind of a misnomer. The media is going to set up huge obstacles and call your candidacy invalid, right? Without warrant, right? And so there's just so many things. So the reality is Vivek Ramaswamy is going to need every single advantage and trust and believe. Joe Rogan's got 200 million subscribers. He has the ear of 250 million people to 500 million people every single day, and he is a kingmaker. He does not want to be a kingmaker. He does not feel comfortable in that role, but he is absolutely a kingmaker. And the reality is, Donald Trump, if he can make it through, right, this presidential candidate run, he is going to be extremely difficult to beat, right? But he doesn't need Joe Rogan's help, right? Even with that, he still wants it, right? Because he knows every single vote is going to matter, right? And so, what's really interesting is you have this situation where Vivek, what he should do with Joe Rogan is he should be working right now, right? And completely back channel this, have his people talk to Joe Rogan's people, and don't beg, right? But just explain to Joe Rogan that he wants to have an open and honest conversation. Because if Joe Rogan thinks you are willing to have an open and honest conversation, he's willing to do it. And that's why Joe Rogan won't touch an interview with President Donald Trump, because I don't think Joe Rogan's 100% right. Joe Rogan doesn't think that President Donald Trump is even capable of an open and honest conversation. I think that's correct. I don't think President Donald Trump remembers what speaking the truth looks like. And I don't think he even remembers. I don't think he has any concept of what honesty is, right? Like, he's been lying for so long, so habitually, so premeditatedly, and bragging about lying that he has a very distant relationship with truth, right? So that's where we're at. So basically, Vivek should right now start back channeling and sending his people to Joe Rogan's people and saying, I desperately want, and actually don't use the word desperate. Say, I want to come on your show and have an open and honest conversation. And honestly, I think Joe Rogan will have a long, incredibly beneficial, open and honest conversation with almost anyone, almost with any, any good, decent person. He will have, and again, that's why President Donald Trump is disqualified. He's not a good or decent person, right? He's just not. It's just the reality of it, right? So, so I think that's where we land. Is you got this situation where Vivek needs to back channel and make sure he gets everything set up to go on Joe Rogan's channel, and he should have an entire team, right? He and his team every single day should be spending 1 hour a day saying, this is what we're going to say on Joe Rogan, and then on Joe Rogan's channel, and then also archive content and say, I'm not going to, this is a great idea, this is a great point, I'm going to, but say, I'm going to put in a vault content that will only be said on Joe Rogan, so that everybody in the world is going to watch that interview. Because I really think it could be 10, 15 points in the general for in the primary and or the general, right? For any candidate, and Vivek Ramaswamy is going to need every single one of those points. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like, subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.